And we're live.
And we are live. That's good. So Alex joined us in a last second. So this will be completely unprepared chat about everything. So welcome everybody to Data Jazzers one more time. So we are one Tuesday late than usually. We were all in a lot of work, and today we are with Mr. Power Query. I would say, Alex, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. Love being in the jazz club here with you too as well. I'm just loving the candles on the tables. We get a lot of jazz music here in kind of St. Louis, so it feels like home right now.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks, Alex, from my side. Thanks for joining. It's pleasure to have you. And yeah, maybe we can start with the I would say obvious Power Query everything. Where did that come from? I mean, now this is a very popular hashtag on social media, and many other people are using it. So, who is the original creator of that maxim? You or someone else?
I mean, I'll say me, but I'll also say that it's everyone's hashtag now, so anyone can claim ownership of it. It was whenever the Power Query kind of Twitter handle had been out there, and they never posted anything. At that point, they started like doing a little bit, and I was like, anything that you post and everything that you post, I'll start posting. So I retweeted it a few times, and then after a while, I just said Power Query everything all the time, retweeted. From there, it just kind of stuck. But I think now, like the way that I define it, it very much feels like the as seen on TV ad where it's like, we can solve any problem. Just throw a little bit of Power Query on it. It'll solve everything. And it's like, yes. Whenever I see people using it though in hashtags, I'm always surprised because I'll like check in on Twitter or I'll check in on LinkedIn. And it's like, oh my gosh, like this thing it's grown a life of its own. I hope somebody claims it one day as their own. Yes, and Christian, good buddy here, Power Query everything. Whoever wants to claim ownership of it, get a trademark on it. You have time to beat me now because I'm on the web stream here with the guys.
Okay, fair enough.
You need to. I saw you in a great shirt with Power Query signs, but we need Power Query everything shirts as well.
I agree. Stickers, shirts, like we need all of it. We need the coffee mugs. We'll start tweeting at Kelly K and we'll see what we can do, and maybe getting some of that community merchandise.
That's good, but everybody knows you just mostly with Power Query. What's your Power BI journey, or where are you coming from to Power BI?
Yeah, so I'm an Excel user at heart, and I went to a DataPig Technologies bootcamp for Excel. So people, if you don't know who the creator of DataPig Technologies, it's Michael Alexander. He took over for John Wachenbach, who wrote the Excel Bible. So if you've ever heard of, the Bible series is, now we have DAX Bible, obviously through the Definitive Guide, but he's taken over that series. He did a boot camp where we talked about the modern Excel experience. So anyone who's not familiar with the term modern Excel, it's Power Query, it's Power Pivot, a lot of that kind of set up by Avi Singh and then obviously Rob Colley. So from there, he's fumbling through writing Power Query M, and I remember that being a very distinct moment in his boot camp. And I was like, well, this language looks like fun. It's very case sensitive. And he's like, whoever wants to go down this road, feel free. And that one always stuck out to me. But we did Power Pivot, and then it was also Power BI Desktop or Designer at the time, and it was not much to look at. I'll be honest with you. I was like, well, I'll focus on the Power Query and Power Pivot stuff for a while. And then eventually just kind of periodically check in with Power BI Desktop. After a while, though, I converted. I attended the Dashboard Today, which I'm just a huge fan of myself. It was those light bulb moments for me. I'm always curious from other people. Like I'll be curious to ask both of you. Like back in the day, you absolutely could get to the end of Power BI in 8 hours. Today, it's like unreasonable to ask someone to learn Power BI in 8 hours. It's like we're barely even scratching the surface. I still like them. I still check in on them every once in a while. I probably set in like 5 or 6 of them just over time to see how they've evolved. But that was my journey, purely through Excel, experimenting with 2010, 2013 Excel's capabilities, and then kind of just jumping onto Power BI as the train was starting to leave the station. But curious for both of you, like similar journeys, Dashboard Today, or how did you kind of fall into it yourselves?
Oh, I'm coming from performance point services, actually.
Oh, yeah.
It was, for anybody who knows it, it was a way back in SharePoint add-in or sometimes a standalone tool. And just was infected with data visualizations. And in the beginning, it was fun. So just visualizing stuff. And then came Tabular, then came everything. And so step by step, and as well as you said, so from current perspective, I know I was discussing with Nicola a year or two back. Back then, you could be a Power BI expert.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I think currently you can you pick your own niche and play there because it's impossible. Product grows so much that's crazy.
Well, then it's like you could be a desktop expert and not have like access to like external tools and capabilities. And then those people who do have like third-party tooling, it's like they're on a completely different level, writing C# and everything else. It's what you have available to you within your organization as well. I always encourage people, like at this point, just go out and create a demo tenant, beat up on it a little bit, and let it get destroyed in 60 days whenever the trial expires. Just get a little bit of your hands on the premium per user if you can. Nicola, how about yourself?
Yeah, so to be honest, I coming from relational database background. I'm completely accidentally finished with Power BI.
Love it.
I used to work with this traditional stack, like first Crystal reports, then SQL Server reporting services, and then my company introduced Power BI report server in 2017. Then it was there for 3 months. No one touched that.
Really?
So yeah. Back then, I mean, we were doing different things with database and then SQL Server stuff and so on. And then I decided to let's try something. So I built one report, which was, of course, very ugly, very bad from all perspectives. And then I attended dashboard in a day, I think twice. Once in US time zone and the other time because there were no available dates in Europe back then. So I attended twice. Yeah, then I picked up some basics and then continue learning and working with Power BI. Yeah, I would say up until maybe a year or two ago, my work was still split between SQL Server and Power BI, like 50-50. And now it's mostly Power BI.
Oh,
but
goodness.
I'm still fan of SQL and all that stuff.
So with the performance point and obviously paginated reports, SSRS, is it kind of funny to both of you, like what was old is now becoming new again with some of the features or capabilities that are showing up in the service?
Yeah, that's I was amazed with the composition tree.
Yep.
Back from Power View, and it's amazing to see it again after so many years.
That's awesome.
Yeah, for me, parameters, I like them because I use them a lot in SQL Server reporting services. So, using parameters for me, it's eye-opening.
Well, that's still my biggest complaint with paginated reports is there was like a massive forums and old discussion boards about how to do certain things. A lot of people didn't renew those web hosting. They're just like, SSRS is dying. Nobody's worrying about it. But now there's an entire new generation of people who want to do things with paginated reports and all the crazy custom stuff. But I can't find them on web searches. And that, I pride myself on my web search game, but all of the forums are dead. Like all this knowledge is gone.
Even when you mention SSRS to a new people, nobody knows what is it. So.
No, they don't.
But paginated reports, it's there, but SSRS, what are you talking about?
Well, that's where it's tough. Like they'll be like, just search for SSRS expressions. And it's like, well, why would they ever come up with that acronym? Like we don't say that anywhere in the Power BI service. So maybe just some better learn more documentation.
But that's same when you're Googling for M.
It's tough. I mean, I live in the Power Query M specifications guide, and I try and use that as much as possible. Shout out to Kyle Mueller. He just released pqm.guide, which is going to kind of be like a companion to dax.guide. So it's purely community driven. We can add our own descriptions, examples. I'll be very curious to see where that kind of goes.
Yeah, for DAX, I would say community did more things for DAX, and especially regarding different tools and resources than Power Query. And I'm really looking forward for Power Query to catch up with DAX.
I agree. I mean, don't tell Jay, but I've purchased every SQL BI course. I own all of their books. I subscribe, and I bow to the temple in which they built. But it is a crazy language to learn, DAX, and like all the context stuff. Even now, after everything, I still feel like I barely scratched the surface. That's why I'd be kind of curious with like the natural language DAX. What are people's thoughts around that as it gets released? And then of course, like the visual level calc that kind of Jay is out, teasing people about with Twitter. Googling for M is a nightmare. Power BI guy, your issue is that you're using Google instead of Bing. I mean, that would have
That's the problem. So, okay. Good to know. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think we scratched the surface of some concepts while talking about our background. So I would like to ask you, because we already asked all of our previous guests, what are the three most important concepts in Power BI to grasp? If you can split that, one for beginners, one for intermediate users, and one for, let's say, advanced Power BI practitioners.
So I was thinking
from your perspective.
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day. Like, for a beginner, like I would probably say get to the canvas as quickly as possible. And it doesn't mean like shape your data, build a star schema, everything else like that. I think it's more important to like find the value of like, oh my goodness, I can drag and drop, and maybe this thing isn't exactly what I needed, but I've now like understood it. Like if I get to the end, like, oh my gosh, this is the value that could be kind of achieved. For intermediate, I would give the exact opposite advice. I would be like, don't rush to the canvas, shape your data, trim it down with Power Query, kind of removing the rows and columns that you don't need, star schema. The more that you can do, before you get to the canvas, the easier and easier things get kind of along the way. And I'll say, like, going back to beginner, that's why I like Quick Create. I try and tell people as much as possible, like just grab a table of data, dump it in Quick Create, and it'll auto build a report for you. As like a business user, or like you don't have to spend 15, 20 minutes simply connecting to, loading, throwing like 7 visuals on the page. It's just like throwaway analytics. I saw something, there was not a big, light bulb that went off, count of a number, move on to the next problem. Like there's always things to solve. And then for advanced users,
don't go to Canvas at all.
Yeah, let me think here. What advice are the most important concepts? I would say lately, it's don't try and boil the ocean. Don't try and make a monster model if that's not what the project requires. I see people trying to bring in everything in terms of data. They try and recreate maybe what's in the warehouse. So they're like, well, I needed to pull in all 140 tables. It's like, for what value? Like, what problem are we solving with this? It's always easier to add things than it is to remove them. And I think that we all understand, like, it's very difficult to retrace where this field or where this measure is being used in a report, or especially as we get kind of to like a lineage, unless you're using analysis services, kind of that log analytics. At that point, like, it's very tough to, pull the horses back in the barn, or whatever phrase that people kind of say. So be very intentional as an advanced user. What are your own thoughts?
I would say I completely agree with you. Although for advanced users, I never actually know what to say. It's because of what I said earlier. So Power BI became so big that depends which area. So if you are talking about DAX, we can do one advice. If we are talking about visualizations, a lot of other things. So it's really hard to think.
Yep.
For beginners, it's easy. Just dive in and try to learn as much as possible, and then pick your specialization part.
Yeah, and that's where it's like tough for me to give advice on like the Power Query side, because I think as you get to more of the advanced, like you're not doing advanced Power Query stuff. You have data that's staged in a warehouse, properly modeled. At that point, you're just not breaking the fold on the initial connection. Intermediate though, oh my goodness, like if Power Query is the only thing you have access to from an ETL perspective, go wild. Like learn all the Power Query you can. You probably have a land of spreadsheets, and Power Query is your best friend to corral those. Absolutely, though, I love being maybe that intermediate stage where it's like there are so many new things and crazy capabilities you can come up with. But I think as you get in more advanced, those areas become less and less. Nicola, yourself.
Yes, so I would definitely agree on the entry point for Power BI to buy let's say buy someone with easy, quick, and easy wins, creating visualizations, dragging clicky, draggy, droppy.
Yep.
But I would say somewhere between at beginner and intermediate level, I will insist on data modeling stuff because it's so important that if you go in one direction without proper data modeling, then you will probably mess up everything once the things start to scale. So I will introduce data modeling somewhere in between beginners and intermediate level. But other than that, fully agree. For the advanced level, it's hard to tell people because there are so many different aspects of Power BI ecosystem that it's really hard to tell on what to focus.
Well, that's for like calculation groups and everything that's being introduced here lately. The calculation group patterns that I see out on Twitter, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to copy and paste these.
Same here.
But I have like no interest in going to learn it all myself today. I'm like, I'm just waiting for hopefully an easy button or an easier button kind of brought to Power BI desktop. But I absolutely love all the C# that I'm kind of seeing from the threads.
Yeah, absolutely. There are so amazing people knowing so much different stuff that can be leveraged within Power BI.
Yeah.
And talking about Power Query, direct query or Power Query?
Direct query or Power Query? What are you thinking there?
So where would you do your transformation?
I mean, it's as far upstream as possible, as far downstream as necessary. Everyone should have that hopefully tattooed somewhere or on a shirt or a hat. But for those who are like, that's why I like the query folding challenge, is because for those who don't have access to databases, who have to come up with inventive patterns while still doing something that maintains the heavy lifting at the source, get inventive, get creative, get some inspiration. But also at the end of the day, you're probably going to get to a point where you're starting to learn SQL along the way. So I may have tricked a few people where it's like, oh my goodness, it is much easier in SQL than it is in Power Query. And then for the other crowd who is more like the database, where they're like, all right, I can see how they could build themselves into a corner over here very easily. So maybe it's where they can kind of step in and say, I see your canvas, let me go and rewrite it for you kind of at the database layer. But those are always the fun things that I enjoy. But never direct query with Power Query. Too many variables.
Everything. Power Query, everything.
Oh,
direct query, nothing.
Query,
just kidding. You mentioned this query folding challenge, so maybe it's a good idea to ask you a question. These 30 days of query folding, and I would say from my personal perspective, that was my best learning resource for query folding. And I would say maybe not on Power Query in general, but let's say on whole this topic that focuses on translating those transformations to and pushing them to the data source. So can we expect more days of query folding, like 60 days or some more challenges? Please say yes.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to. I've got my whiteboard over here with like goals and things that I want to accomplish. I do have 30 days of Tabular on there. And a lot of that was going to be inspired by like Tableau Editor and kind of everything dropping kind of during the pandemic. I might go back to query folding, but I think that's also what's fun is like the content is now out there living. A thing that I want to do, and I'm probably going to start doing through like user group sessions, is getting people involved in building custom connectors. The new Power Query SDK that dropped is incredible on VS Code. You can now run M scripts over in Visual Studio Code. So if people haven't played around with that, please do. Let us know your feedback. But I see that as like the next logical place for people who are getting into M a little bit more. It's just custom connectors are a vast area that we don't talk about enough. I'll say on the CAT team and maybe on the product side as well, in terms of like giving people the building steps and how to get there. So that's my focus. But tomorrow could change. I can be back to query folding.
I think with that challenge, query folding as an acronym became live there, and people really started to talk about it. And I heard from a lot of people. I still hear it when I'm doing some trainings. query folding and you see question marks above people's head. Lots of new users still are not aware. What is it? Where is it? And why is it important?
That's what I learned from the kind of Chicago Summit. Was a lot of people still to this day don't know that it's occurring. And we're also thinking about all the people that get introduced to Power BI for the first time in the year 2022, where the rest of us are like, well, we've been at this for 7 years and we've stumbled our way through it. For them, this is eye-opening, hearing query folding. And they're like, my refresh times, I am absolutely that person who's dealing with 3-hour refreshes. All of this is huge for them. When the step folding indicators become locally available through the, I hate the title of it, but it says Power Query Diagram View in Power BI Desktop. Whenever that experience comes locally, wow, the development experience of Power Query will be through the roof. Just right now, I refuse to demo it through the local experience anymore. I'm just trying to prepare everyone for that new modern UI.
When does it come to? Sorry.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, because Alex mentioned, when does it come to Power BI Desktop?
Yeah.
Those
so
icons.
Out on the Power BI release plan, it's listed as March 2023. So
okay, cool.
Please yell at us if we don't make those dates and just let us know how important it is.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
And you mentioned now CAT team. So we had here in Data Jazzers a few members of CAT team. So it was Phil Seamark, it was Chris Webb. How your day, week, year is different from theirs?
Oh goodness. So that's, I don't know if they've explained like the breakout of our teams. Like we have generalist groups and we have specialist groups. So like there could be generalists who are just very broad across the entire platform. And then people who are very specialized. So like, I'm not going to call up Phil Seamark to help me build a beautiful Power BI report. Like it ain't happening. So Phil is one of our specialists in that regard. Ted Pattison for Power BI embedding. He is incredible at doing ISV kind of development work. So that's kind of like our specialist breakout. For more of us generalists, like today could be anything. Like you could yell at me today about a data gateway. Tomorrow you could yell at me about tables and matrices. It's like, when are you going to do this? When are you going to do that? The important part of our roles is like understanding what are the problems that you're trying to solve. So if we are able to concentrate and fix these things, how does that help you be more productive? So that's why I always encourage people whenever they're kind of tagging us on Twitter or tagging us on Reddit, just give a little bit of context. Like if you say, increase export limit. Okay, what are you trying to do with that export limit? Well, I'm trying to move data into my next system. Okay, so you're trying to do data munging and you're trying to do ETL patterns. Like we can go solve that. It doesn't always need to be just a generic blanket statement. So that's like kind of how our days are laid out. But a lot of it's meeting after meeting after meeting, syncing with the product teams. I'm aligned with the data integration team, so I work very closely with them in terms of the data integration experiences. So Power Query, obviously online, the experience through desktop, and then data gateways. So I read everything, I index everything, and then hopefully, as I bring the scenarios to the team, all the customer voices are heard. So that's how I describe our days.
Yeah, but you're too humble.
Why?
I read on Twitter that someone posts, Alex helped me with this, Alex helped me with that, Alex is wonderful, he helped me with this. Yeah, so...
I don't do anything, though. It's all them. They have the spirit inside of them. I
told you're humble. Okay.
And with all those full days, how do you spend your non-Power Query free time?
Oh my goodness, pro wrestling. I just watch body slams and eat pizza. That's my Wednesday night checkout. My wife is in a band and I like to go watch her concert. She's got a album release this upcoming Saturday, so I'll plug that. Sister, go find them out on Spotify. As soon as she hits it big, I'm throwing away all my technology. I'm deleting my Twitter. I'm just going to go retire by the pool. So help me out with a few streams, everyone.
Okay. So eating pizza, which pizza? With pineapple or?
Oh, goodness. If I can. The place around me is Neapolitan style. So it's wood-fired, 90 seconds. Just incredible. That's kind of how I unwind every Wednesday. Just go there and get a quick 90-second pizza.
No, nice.
But they only have pineapple like once or twice a year. So whenever I see it on the menu, I'm definitely running over.
Okay, cool, cool. One more thing that I wanted to ask you. So I know that you and Alex Duplair were doing together videos.
Yes.
Back then I was watching, like, I don't know, 2 years ago or something like that. And you stopped. Do you plan to join the forces again in the future?
I think we will. I think for now, it was just a lot of the kind of early time commitment for him. I think he was having to roll out of bed at like 7 a.m. So he was like, this is not sustainable. My wife is starting to yell at me as the world is opening up. Like, get out of the house, go do things on a Saturday. Let's go for a hike. I think we've talked about, especially with like data marts and some other things coming new in product, like we would love to start exploring those through the to Alex brand and kind of through the streams. I'll say we don't have a target date, but we're always talking in the background about like, should we do a conference? Should we do this? Should we do that? I absolutely loved kind of working with him. And for those who got to see him in Chicago, like he talked about, I think 78 gigabyte model that he kind of manages. So absolutely, when you talk about scale, when you talk about real world experience, Alex Duper, he's just a fantastic resource to kind of provide his perspectives. And his latest kind of talk there as well, he was like, some of the best practices don't work, and that's okay. And I was like, oh my goodness, like that's quite the advice to give, but he's living proof at the size of scale and at the size of distribution of his model. Like some things you just have to break every once in a while.
Yeah, I need to catch up with this session. Yeah.
And with now all the new releases, lots of things are happening in DAX, in Power BI Desktop itself. What are you anticipating the most, things not under NDA for Power Query? Or what would you wish to have?
What would I wish to have versus, I'll say what's publicly available. Diagram View and Power BI Desktop, or whatever the terrible name is. Bring that one locally. Let's start showing everyone the modern experience of Power Query. Like that is an absolute game changer for me. Outside of that, and this is like a little bit more selfish, but like I've helped my mom connect to a file out in a SharePoint, and I did not realize how much of an arduous experience that is. Trying to guess the correct URL string, trying to guess like all of these other crazy components. I didn't realize how much of an issue that is for so many people. And that's where like the farther you get to advance, right? Like the less you're connecting to a flat file out in a SharePoint or a OneDrive location. So those things are also coming up on the roadmap. Matthew Roche has a fantastic blog around that. And he said that's his most read blog and that's his most watched video is simply connecting to a file out in a SharePoint. I was like, wow. So those are the two big ones. I'm trying to think like, and this is where we're like blending reality with like Twitter, right? It's because Mo just like dropped a list of like 20 things that he's going to go do out on Twitter. He's like, we're going to add folders. We're going to add a visual level Calyx and we're going to add Power BI Designer API that Marco Russo designed 6 years ago. And it's like, I don't even know what's real anymore. But one last thing, data load output destinations for Power Query.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. So with that on the roadmap, being able to write from Power Query directly into an Azure SQL database, into a SharePoint folder, Synapse, wherever else, that experience of having an end-to-end ETL with Power Query, oh my goodness. Like, I'll be curious with your own thoughts. Like sometimes people don't need BI. Like sometimes they don't need business intelligence. They need to move data from one place or one system to another. A solution like this is just absolutely perfect for them to be doing the right thing, as opposed to those scenarios where they're like, I get all my data in Power BI, now how do I get it out of it? Like,
I think that's the missing puzzle.
It is. I would agree.
For many scenarios, I think that's the missing puzzle.
Yeah.
Or some of my clients were, developing a same Power BI model for years, and now it's such a huge monster that nobody can maintain it anymore or move it anywhere. So they would pay for it.
Wow. I see that too when the models get too complex and it kind of grows outside the skill set of developers. Is that something you're both kind of coming across as well? As kind of the product is growing more and more and hybrid tables, auto ags? I'd be kind of curious.
Especially when people are trying to immediately implement whatever is coming new. And it's a great fun, but when you put it to big production models and include all those nice, sexy new features, could get you into trouble a few months later.
Yeah. Now I see for those multiple audiences for Power BI apps, I saw a lot of people turning that on, and you can't go back. And now the main question is, how can I go back? You can't. Yeah, so I would say be mindful with new stuff, but I'm really looking forward to this output feature.
Yeah, and
Power Query.
You're reminding me, because I used to have that on some of my user group sessions, is like, be careful with preview features. I remember designing a model with like just the aggregate tables back in the day. And then I went to publish, and it was like, this compatibility level isn't supported yet in the service. And I was like, no,
not now.
I designed everything around this.
Yeah.
We have a question from Christian. So, are there any plans in Microsoft to allow customizing the PQ ribbon, adding custom functions, new buttons, etc.?
Yeah, I'd be kind of curious on the ribbon there. I know what you're talking about from like the Excel experience, where you can have some kind of different icons. The adding custom functions one is a little bit more interesting, because we have the personal query gallery as an item out on the public roadmap, where you can start storing your custom functions through the Power BI service, and then having a user interface to recall those. I would say we're meeting that need. New buttons. Is that like developing your own custom button? Let us know, Christian. I'd be kind of curious on that one. But
let's wait.
Let's see if he replies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise, I think the was it Quick Access Toolbar? I think that's the official title from kind of Office and everything else. I would love to see that. I'll take that feedback back to the team.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, any conferences you plan past Summit probably?
No, I'm done for the year. Kind of heading out for a vacation, finally to unplug in kind of mid-November, and then just doing some user group sessions here until the end of the year. Kind of one coming up on Friday, and then one coming up in December. It's titled "All the Cool Things You Can Do in Power Query Online." I think that there's a lot.
Many of them.
Yeah, and there's just like a lot of features that I didn't know about, and I'm kind of curious of like how many other people didn't know about these crazy things. Like typing in the transformation you'd like to do kind of up in the global search, and then being able to return kind of all those buttons. Like it's pretty neat stuff.
And just thinking of one, so when we are talking about multiple people throughout this conversation, so if you are picking a perfect team for a big challenging project, who would be on your team?
Who would be on my team? I'll say Chris Hamill from the reporting design layer. He creates very simple and easy to navigate reports. I love very beautiful and complex reports, but when I think about like, who is this person I'm going to give this to? I think I called it like Power BI for the boss. Like if you were to hand this to your boss the first time, do you want them to have to figure out bookmark toggles and everything else? Probably not. Just provide a clean, easy to consume report. So he's my instant win there. I've been working a lot with Patrick LeBlanc here lately. I think he's incredible from the data modeling aspect. I would probably lean on him, and then he'll lean on Phil if he gets stuck with the DAX problem. So that'll be Patrick's thing to figure out. Power Query. I'm going to say that I'm not going to be involved with the project. I'm going to just be on the outside providing requirements. I'm going to say my buddy Aki over in Japan.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, he's been a fantastic addition to the team, and I've absolutely just loved getting to know him. And then also reading his, Japanese Power Query content, Power BI content on the web. I just hit translate tweet, and I love reading all the stuff that they're up to. So,
sounds like a good team, dream team.
Yeah, it wouldn't be too bad. Let's see this one.
Donald asks if you're coming to Chicago.
No, I'll be in customer events that week. So I didn't even know about that one. Is that through Mike Carlo and Tommy out of the Power BI.tips?
I also didn't hear.
Probably if it's Chicago user group, probably.
Yeah. Let us know, Donald. Are you taking the train back up? You taking the Amtrak? Well, I guess who are your guys' dream team? Who would you be assembling for the Captain Planet, the Avengers, whatever, rings of power brought together to build the ultimate Power BI solution?
That's an interesting one. I can always pick you, Alex, for Power Query part. I would accompany you with Nicola and challenge you both with query folding tasks and those kind of things.
Oh, that would be fun.
I would enjoy working with Alberto on a DAX and modeling side. And I would say Pragati from London for visualizations, because that's always part. Somehow we all create perfectly nice Power Query folding. Model is super optimized, working perfectly. And when it comes to visualizations, at least from personal point of view, I somehow get stuck there, spending a lot of time to get something done.
That was me my point. Like, I don't think I make ugly reports, but it just takes me a really long time. And I'm always like a tinkerer too. And I think the formatting pane just allows way too much tinkering. So, Nicola, yourself.
Yes. So, let's put it this way. So if I don't count on people from Microsoft, so I will just pick people from communities. So for Power Query, I will take probably Ben Gribaldo.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Probably him. Yeah. Then for DAX, let's not include Italians.
It's obvious choice.
Yeah. So probably for DAX, I will pick Matt Ellington.
Oh yeah, Matt's great.
Yeah. From visualization, that here I would need definitely most help because I suck with the data visualization stuff. So I would probably pick either Kerry Kolosko or maybe for data visualization, Kerry Kolosko. Yeah, probably her. Yeah, or Armand van Amersfoort. I don't know if you know the guy.
No.
He's a Dutch guy.
I'm working with him at the moment, and perfect one.
Brilliant.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll check out his content then.
Yeah, that would be my.
I'm just listening to myself and two of you now, and every one of us forgot one thing, and all of our clients are forgetting it somehow. Is administration, backend administration, setting up service, security.
I pick Melissa. Sorry.
I mean, she's the default. Like everything she does is like perfection. It feels like so. Yeah, like
I would always go as well with Kurt Buller for overseeing the project and establishing the rules.
Yeah. Kurt's series lately is just like out of this world.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest strength. One of the biggest strengths of Power BI as a product is this broad and really strong community. So many, amazing ideas, solutions, workarounds, and
Well, that was kind of the pandemic. Right as it was starting to hit, everyone that couldn't go to conferences was just like, we're giving away all of our content online through user group sessions, all hours of the day, all days of the week. It was like content overload for a lot of folks. I absolutely loved it, but at a certain point, I was like, I got to draw myself back. I love administration. I loved writing Jupyter notebooks filled with PowerShell and kind of like doing a lot of the administrative tasks. And like you said, you can start with a specific portion of Power BI today. You can evolve into something tomorrow. You could always come back and kind of like take your skills to another level because you have a whole new dimension that you've kind of added. It's just a weird path that we're kind of on. I think a lot of us were just like, well, I just kind of fell into it. And next thing you know, I'm an admin of a 10,000 person or 5,000 person organization trying to adopt Power BI. And it's cool that we're all in kind of like the beginning steps. Like I wasn't there for Excel 1.0, but I'm certainly here for Power BI, 1.0, and where we go from here. So,
yeah. So long way behind us, and a long way, I would say, in front of us again with Power BI.
Every day, new users are being added. And I think that was something I took away quite a bit from kind of Chicago and Power Platform World Tour, is all of us collectively, like, we all know the crazy words and terms and inside jokes. Like, how do we accelerate someone else's journey so it doesn't take them 7 years, so it doesn't take them 5 years? Like, what are the important things that they should start knowing, today? That was kind of what we focus on with the day after dashboard and a day content. All that is available for free out on our public GitHub. So ak.ms/PBI workshops. Like, if you sat someone in a dashboard in a day and you let them build recklessly for 6 or 9 months, what would be that thing that you would pull them back in and say, hey, let me teach you properly? I'll ask both of you. What would be that thing? Is it data modeling?
I would always go for the data modeling, simply because neither Power Query, neither DAX can help you a lot if you have a really poor data model.
Yeah. Nicola?
Yeah, I would agree. Everything starts, the more time you spend on your data model, the less time you will spend then with the DAX, writing DAX, and reduce DAX complexity. So I would say data modeling topics.
I can see that.
And when we're mentioning data modeling, how do you approach it? So I personally always go the analog way. Use pen and paper and start checking things around, wondering how two of you, Nicola, Alex, how are you approaching data modeling from scratch?
What are the IDs and keys available within my database table? What are the tables I absolutely minimally need? Like, we have a Dataverse instance in our kind of team that we use for a lot of our customer and feedback tracking. That thing has way too many keys. So, like, I'm purely SSMS connecting to the thing, reviewing the schemas, outlining everything before I ever go into Power Query and hit connect. Like, I want to know exactly what I'm connecting to. I know that isn't a luxury for everyone. Sometimes it's just, here's a spreadsheet and try and model it in 10 different ways. But the more work you can do, like mapping things up front, documenting the project and requirements, that's how I've only found ways to be successful. Nicola?
Yeah, for me, it mostly depends what's your data source. So if you're connecting to an enterprise data warehouse, chances are that I would say 90% of things are already done for you in advance. You just need to check relationships, maybe, decide if you need to switch somewhere, granularity of data or something like this. But if you are working with other data sources, like you mentioned, Excel sheets or, I don't know, CSV files, or using data from web, then it's more challenging. But then we still have Power Query to shape our data like we do it, not in enterprise data warehouse, but to remind you to, let's say, to data mart from data warehouse, I would say. So depends mostly on the data source, I would say.
So Ken Poles had sent something. I'll be very curious in your guys' thoughts and feedback. He says, I don't ever build things in Power BI Desktop anymore. He said he does it all through Excel, and then he just imports the model. What are your thoughts with that statement?
Nice approach.
Why? Is there
an interesting approach?
Is there a specific reason, or?
I think it could just be like hardware constraints and things of that nature. So if you think about like booting up Power BI Desktop, like it's consuming a ton of RAM, right?
Okay.
Where Excel is purely just jump into the Power Query window, connect and load to the data model, and then just maybe create relationships. I would say the DAX editing experience over in Excel is a lot to be desired, right? But if you can do all the importing tables, all of the modeling, and then purely at that point hit file, import from Power Pivot, Power Query, etc. I thought it was an interesting way that he approached development in a lightweight fashion.
Yeah, it's interesting, definitely interesting. So I haven't heard about that approach so far. So I would really like to understand in more details, but it's definitely interesting. So it's Ken's approach.
Yeah, because I mean,
Okay.
you're doing the same Power Query experience. It's the same, almost like
Yeah. I
identical
mean,
UI.
yeah.
Very interesting.
We're trying for some smaller projects to see how it's working, and I would be interested in comparing RAM usage between those two. So try to run it simultaneously and see where actually is RAM going.
I mean, the SSAS instance loaded in the background of Power BI Desktop. I mean, boom! As soon as you start it, like your resources are on a fight to zero, especially if you have Teams open. So
Yeah. But hardware is cheaper and cheaper.
Fernando has a question.
Love this. So, is there a guide to consult when I get stuck? I know the answers are provided, but I'm thinking on a step before just to help find the answer. So, I'll be curious on that one, and I'll provide my thoughts. Right now, I have a complete Markdown document of every function that will fold connected to a SQL database. I'm going to publish this, and at some point, the engineering teams obviously will continue to fix things, and I can move from a false into a true column. Would having knowledge of what functions fold, would that be helpful for you? And I'll ask Augustine.
Yes, I would say for me, yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Would be, especially if people are just starting. So just point them where answer could be is really helpful.
Yeah, and that's where I was thinking, like
a first step. Okay, these functions fold, so I know that the problem is maybe somewhere else.
Yeah, and at least what I have designed is function name doesn't fold SQL equivalent. So if you're to do like a table first n, which is like a limiter of like top n, right, for SQL, like that's what I'm going to give you. I'm not going to give you anything else. It's just going to be, yes, it folds. Here's the SQL equivalent. Here's the docs out to the SQL. It does sound like people would be receptive to that. So I'll get that published. I've got a lot of that done, but love hearing kind of the vote of confidence that is needed.
Okay. From your point of view in Power Query, what's the, not equivalent, but on same level of complexity and misunderstanding like calculating DAX? What function is on that level?
There's too many. So the biggest issue that I found is like optimizing and like just trying to understand what's going on with this step is just a black box of mystery. Everyone is like, well, if I delete this step and I do this thing, I'm like, well, that's not how the engine runs. The execution patterns are way different than you probably think. Don't spend hours trying to shave off 2 seconds. Just like, if you're satisfied with the data set refresh time, just go with it. From there, though, absolutely like buffering. So table.buffer, list.buffer. Those are the biggest things where like if you can wrap your head around when to do those, you can do some incredible things. But when it comes to query folding, list transformations are pure magic, the things that they can do. You don't know why it works, you don't know how it works, but using list functions, oh my goodness, you could have anything fold. And none of it makes any sense.
How about value.native query?
So this is interesting. Notice it out on Twitter, noticing it over on Reddit, but it seems like the behavior has changed. And you'll have to tell me if you're seeing the same, but SQL Server, advanced options, paste in your SQL statement, hit OK, connect, whatever. In the past, it would all be a single line that said SQL.database, server database, query. From what I've been told, from what I'm reading online, that behavior is no longer the same. It now says the SQL.database as your first step, and then the second step will be value.native query. It'll write that for you, that function. And then it also has
I am familiar with the old setup then. So value.native query was like a third step, let's say, that you'll do. And for me personally, I was playing around with SQL Server data, and when I pull the data from one table, it works. When I try to do joins, it doesn't work. But I also I was in touch with Sandeep Pawar.
Oh yeah, AI guy.
Yeah. So we tested together some stuff, and he told me that I forgot if it was Synapse or Azure SQL database. The same query with value native query, the same query that were not folded on SQL Server was folding on his data source.
Yeah.
That was, for me, was like, why? But
Yeah.
that was a few months ago. Maybe something changed in the meantime.
Yeah. So I like the enable folding flag. I think it's pretty cool. People had asked me at the conference, like, why don't you just make that on by default? I don't know how I feel about that. Like, do I care about SQL injections? Do I care about an outside system writing SQL against my source? I don't know. Should it be on or off by default? What is your vote? Enable folding.
Look, I'm SQL guy, so I'm biased here. So I would say turned on by default.
Really?
Yeah.
I would say off. I would say off simply because looking from Power BI developer team perspective, you will sooner or later in big companies you will get into trouble with SQL admins, data warehouse admins, performance loads, whatever. That's why I would say discuss it first, then turn it on.
Yeah, I think I'm an off first as well. But if you're going to write a native SQL statement, why didn't you just write it to perfection the first time? Like, why continue to do partial folding through the Power Query UI? I don't know these answers. But if people give me scenarios and what you're trying to do, I mean, these are the feedback that I take back to the product engineering team. But I was just like, that's such an interesting request with value.native query. Oh,
Good to know. Good to know.
I know. Good discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing we left for the end. When can we expect your book?
Oh, never. I never write.
And why not?
So I used to write an Excel blog, and I probably did it for like 3 some odd years. And I think at the end, when I was like looking at like SEO popularity, whatever else, it was like, you're the 118th best Excel blogger in the world. And I was like, this sucks. So I was like, let me go to user groups. So I started going to user groups. Through user groups, they were like, all right, let's start connecting you to a conference. Let's start having you do the next thing. I absolutely loved just getting out and seeing people, seeing the light bulb moments in front of people as well. I absolutely love that type of experience. I do recognize in terms of like scalability, writing things is more important. Hopefully some people have seen some of my contributions over on the Power Query blog. I wrote a introduction to practical query folding guide, probably about 5 minutes long in terms of like readability. But for a new user, I would absolutely say, read this article first, come talk to me after. When it comes to writing a book, and this is like for both of you, like I absolutely want to write a book on the Power Query M language as a language with no UI, none of those examples. Would a pure language book be of interest to anyone?
I think yes. It's a niche topic, to be honest. Yeah.
Yep.
So because most of the people I know that work with Power Query are masters of UI. They know some nuances of M language, but they are masters of UI, which is, of course, understandable.
Would
but,
you prefer that they make the UI easier for them, or would you prefer that they jump in the advanced editor?
Yeah, that's a hard
Welcome
question.
to the conversations I have every day.
Yeah, that's a hard one. That's a hard one. I don't know, because I don't have so broad, understanding of the topic. So it's a hard one.
Augustine,
I would say you get more powerful by writing pure language.
Yep.
I would go with advanced editor, simply because, just from my own experience, UI, whatever you do with it, it's limited in the end. And it will cover a lot of use cases, a lot of combinations. But as we all know, after a while, you will get a challenge that is simply not solvable with whatever you put in UI. And then you need to open advanced editor. That's why I would say the sooner you get to be friends with advanced editor, it's better.
Yeah, I see a lot of people's paths are UI, reading the formula bar to understand the syntax, a couple light edits on the formula bar, then they find out the advanced editor. and then maybe
like
within
quick
the
measures in like quick measures for DAX.
Yeah, but that's where it's like
Similar thing.
columns from examples where you just type in what you want and it does all of it for you. Is more of like natural language type of capabilities where you just type in things. Is that what would help people? I don't know. Like, these are the things where I'm losing sleep at night thinking, like, should I be writing a Power Query M book? Or should I?
You should definitely write it. I think you will have audience absolutely for that. No, I don't know how wide this audience would be, but
I agree.
you will
It'll be
definitely
niche.
have.
Yeah, extremely niche.
It's always hard to, especially when we are discussing now. So we are all biased with Power BI, and I think it's a hard position to think of what would users need with a biased mind. So one thing is developer, the other thing is citizen developer.
Yep.
Where they usually need completely different things than a professional tabular developer, Power Query developer. So it's hard to pinpoint who's the audience actually.
Yeah, and this is where like Chris Webb and myself had some discussions. You can create an ugly query and be completely fine. Like, if it takes 3 hours to refresh and it used to take you 6 hours to do it manually, like, woo, you're happy, right? If it's done in the morning before the boss gets there, you don't care. It could be 200 steps long. It's really for those people who are kind of like technically curious, who would want to go maybe to like the next level of like the language. I think about Gil Ravi's book, Collect, Combine, and Transform Data Using Power Query. He probably has like the most complete M book that I would say, in the sense of here's business problem, here's UI, here's some advanced editor. I thought his book was fantastic. I know that they're working on kind of a second edition to incorporate new things. A pure language book, though. I'll take this comment and the feedback, from the audience, and I'll start thinking about it. I'll ruminate on it over the winter. I would love to write it, though. Absolutely, that would be the only book I'll ever write. And after that, I'll never touch pen and paper again.
Okay, that's good to know. No, it was interesting because I saw on your website like a special page dedicated for writing a book. So I don't want to write a book or something like this. It's called.
Yeah, it's the Pact, the authors. I love the books that they put out. It's just they have an interesting campaign in which to find new authors. They just ping you nonstop, and they kind of find you on LinkedIn and Twitter and everything else. Like, leave me alone. Just take this URL if you ever need me.
Okay. Yeah. A comment from Michael. It is needed because of the great DAX resources. Yeah.
See, this is tough, though. Once again, if a UI-based book was available for those business users, would that solve more of their problems?
Yeah, could be. That's a good question once again. So
I think Miguel and Ken did a good job with their
Miguel and Ken, their book. I have it. It's amazing from UI perspective.
Yep. Oh.
Okay, so we are on time.
We hit the top.
Yeah.
Hopefully everyone had fun.
Then yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
At least I can guarantee from Augustine and myself.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me to the club here. I'm still amazed just by the jazz tables in the background here. So I'm welcome.
Thanks for joining, Alex. We really appreciate that. You were an amazing guest, and it was amazing to talk to you about all those topics. And looking forward to catch up with you once again.
We always offer ourselves, so when the book is out, you can publish it here and broadcast it to the audience.
Tell you what, I'll come back and I'll do a reading for it. I'll just read to the audience.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Alex.
Power Query everything. I'll see you guys.
Power Query everything.
See you guys. See you.